This is the Fantasy Football Gameplan, where we talk about fantasy football and the NFL. Pretty exciting day yesterday.
Yesterday? What about the weekend? It was pretty exciting.
Right. What do you think about all the kicks? All the kicks that were missed the
Like
whole
field
weekend.
goals?
Yeah, and extra points. Tons of them. You'd think that with these teams being the best teams that are left now, the final 8, that they all have pretty good offenses and they'd all have pretty good kickers that you could count on. And I think I'm lost. I know that Tucker's supposed to be the best kicker. He missed 2 field goals. I know it was windy. Then your Buffalo kicker, he misses. And at halftime, they missed multiple, both of them. At halftime, it was so fast watching the highlights because the score was 3-3, and the highlights were 3 missed kicks and 2 made kicks. The highlights went really fast, is what I'm saying.
Well, I've had this discussion with you in the past where I believe that kicking should be compensated based on performance. So you don't get paid if you don't make the kick.
Right.
And then you'd get like every soccer player in the world being like, you know what? If I can kick a field goal, I can make X amount of money. And there'd be a cap, right? But there would be a bonus.
Yeah.
And I think like that's really how the position should go, to be like every field goal is going to give you $8,000 by 30 yards, like extra point, $8,000, right? And then basically you go to 40, then it's like 10, and you hit over 50, then it's 25. And, based on your consistency, whatever, but you're capped at under $1 million. And, but you could get bonuses. I don't know how much kickers make, but, and then you'd actually get people in performance instead of having, but it's also a head game too, right? Like, for instance, I actually listened to football this weekend, the commentators, and they were stressing about the backup quarterback coming in for Baltimore and how professional and how intact he was, and it didn't go into his head. And then also they were saying too, when Buffalo was coming onto the field, oh yeah, you just got to think about it, guys. You're 2 games away from the Super Bowl. So all that kind of hype also does, I think, play along. That psychological help also plays along with your performance. However, your job is to kick a field goal. Your job is to catch a ball. Your job is to run north-south. Your job is to return punts. You should be able to do your job. I don't know if you work in a restaurant, your job was to wash dishes, and you decide just to break dishes. You probably wouldn't have much of a career.
You do okay in Greece, I think.
Opa! It's a party.
But everywhere else, it'd be a problem. Yeah, but it's not like the guys are lining up thinking, well, I'm getting paid anyway, so it doesn't matter if I make this kick.
Are you sure?
And you would think that, like, experience, the more you do it under those adverse conditions, the better you get at it. So, like, some guy off the street doing a kick each week wouldn't really, what you were saying, like, there's so much pressure and there's, a lot going on, so it's tougher to make the kick. But an experienced guy, I mean, Tucker, did you see his face when he missed? They showed his face afterwards, and he was just like, that was the first one, and the second one was like, and I know he was trying, and I know it was windy, but like, he's the best of the best. And I think, fantasy wise, like, next year, I just think when it comes to kickers, I'm just going to flip a coin.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll look at some other positions then. And I was actually surprised, like, if you take quarterback, fantasy wise, like, if you're looking at the guys that were left, the 8 this weekend, I mean, Lamar Jackson had a terrible game. Terrible. I thought Mayfield was okay. Number 6, Mayfield. And number 8, Lamar Jackson. I thought they didn't really live up to the billing. Lamar's pick 6 in the end zone, that salted that game away for Buffalo. That was it. They were done. I was also surprised at Drew Brees, number 9, Drew Brees. Um, they kept saying, the commentators kept saying, well, he can't push the ball down the field. And Todd Bowles, the coach, knows this, the defensive coordinator. So they're just going to plaster on the receivers. Michael Thomas he was nowhere, but Brees he couldn't complete a touchdown pass. I think that the touchdown that they threw came from Winston off the bench in the trickeration play that the Bears pulled on them the week before. Sean Payton copies the play, brings Winston in the game, and he throws a bomb to a wide open Traquan Smith, number 10.
Yeah, number 10.
And he scores, and that totally messed up Tampa's defense. They didn't know what to do on that play.
So the balls were thrown a little bit behind. The receivers did get their hands on them, and they were kind of like tip deflections, interceptions. So, is it always the quarterback's fault that he's not leading the receiver? Or it's like the receiver's fault that he's fumbling the ball. There was, the defense came to play yesterday in the Buccaneers game.
Yeah.
Right. Whatever scheme they came up with, knowing Drew Brees' weakness with probably his ribs and not able to throw the ball long. Yeah. So, there's all these accountabilities. There's a lot of things that was actually against the Saints in that game that the Buccaneers seemed to, capitalize on. Yeah. And one of the things was just straight defense. They were able to shut Kamara down. They didn't give him the edge, right? And then they had their speedy safeties coming in and playing. So it was just altogether a better schemed win than what the Saints put on the field, right? And yeah, maybe 9 Drew Brees couldn't throw the ball deep, but he did take some shots. But I'm not saying his interceptions were also just as bad, just as fault as the guy catching the ball, and then laying it all on Drew being the one that caused the problems.
Well, they didn't have your guy Taysom Hill. Remember, you were saying he was Mr. Do Everything. He was out.
Yeah.
And I think they missed that element in their game, not having him to come in and switch things up. And they seemed limited. I mean, Winston's throw was good. He had the one throw against his old team. But I mean, what can you do with that fantasy-wise next year? That doesn't. I mean, unless Brees retires, like they say he might. We don't know what we're going to see in New Orleans next year. But I was impressed with Brady looking good against a really good defense. And, Mahomes got hurt. So that was a disappointing game for him. And then, Josh Allen this weekend was a real standout. I think they couldn't run the ball. I think they had 32 yards rushing in the game, and it was all Josh Allen's arm. So, I mean, right now, the best of the best for next year, keeping in mind, I mean, Mahomes, he's always great, but, he got hurt. And Brady and Josh Allen, for me, they just climbed in the rankings. Playing against good teams, playing that well, because the Ravens defense is very good. And I was really impressed with him. So next year, I'm going to be looking at his availability and giving him a serious look and moving him up the ranks for sure.
Yeah, I agree. It would be nice if you got the Diggs or even Cole Beasley as a pair.
Yeah.
To go with that production. Great quarterback. It's interesting to see the young quarterbacks that were playing this past weekend being the quarterbacks that tend to use their feet a little bit more, being the ones that get injured a little bit more, as Josh Allen does use his feet as well too, but he's more of that pocket passer, that traditional type of stand in the pocket, throw and pass. But it's the longevity of these guys that run around and try and make plays. Now, getting sacked is one thing, and head injuries are another. It's just a toll on the body over time. Like Tom Brady is famous, and he did this week too, because the team needed to do the one the 1 yard gain,
Yeah,
right?
fall
And
forward. It's a rushing touchdown.
he's been doing that for years.
Yeah,
He's the king of it or whatever. It's, he's not doing what Breeze did last week and trying to jump over the offensive and defensive line.
right, right.
So there's ways to use your legs. I'm just saying that like the quarterbacks that are now going injured at the critical time of the year,
Hmm.
it's because their bodies all season long have been stacked against them. Right?
Hmm.
It's just like anything. The more times you get hit, the more it affects you. It's just not one of those things where you just get hit, you do whatever. So just keeping
Also,
that in mind.
yep, you're right. And also in the cold, it hurts more getting hit in the cold. And
Yeah.
this time of year, unless you're playing indoors, it's cold. And I think both of these championship games are being played outdoors.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's a factor, something to look at. Fantasy wise, you want durability, and even though Brady's old, and Rodgers is 37, the other number 12, Rodgers.
Mhm.
Those guys are really judicious about when they run, and they're really good in terms of taking care of themselves and having hits minimalized against
Well, I think Patrick Mahomes hurt his toe at the beginning of the game because he slid
them.
right near the end zone in the first drive of the game. I think that's where he injured his toe,
Mm-hmm.
and that put him into a limp. And then, he wasn't as quick as to go around. So it's kind of funny. It's like, yes, you talk about these older quarterbacks that know when to run and how to run and when to slide.
Yeah.
And because I kind of looked at that slide, I don't know. I haven't watched NFL football this today. I'm in a different room, so I don't have a television um, in front of me. So, but really, I think it was that slide that he just kind of like maybe slid, and then who knows where his foot was positioned. But if you look at sort of what happened,
Yeah.
maybe he got hit. I don't know. I like I said, like that was so early on in the game. I could have forgot.
Yeah, it helps to get those fantasy yards from the quarterbacks, from their legs, because you get a point for every 10 yards that you run for, and you get a point for every 25 yards that you throw for. But if you're scheming to have your quarterback making a lot of runs, yeah, vulnerable. Definitely vulnerable.
Yeah, but then on the flip side of things, um, number 3, Russell Wilson. If I could ever get him in my draft, I would love to. So,
Okay,
uh,
but next year they're saying they're going to run the ball more because they kind of shut him down the stretch. He wasn't playing well the last few games, and they ended up losing because they couldn't complete the passes again
at,
the way they were doing earlier.
at the end of the day, yes, they will probably change their scheme a little bit, but Russell Wilson was still going to produce as an effective pass and running quarterback in the NFL. He is not going to change his game. Yes, maybe his passing's a little bit gone, or they're going to go to 30 runs instead of 21 runs in a game. But Russell Wilson, if you could pick him up in a draft, definitely someone valuable and QB1 on your team
Yeah,
at any time.
he's really smart about getting down too. He doesn't hurt his toe on baseball slides because he was a baseball player. He's pretty good on sliding. I mean, I know Mahomes has good baseball pedigree, but I noticed that Russell Wilson is very good at not taking hits when he's running with the ball. He gets down.
Yeah.
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 So you mentioned Diggs, receiver wise. I was surprised this year at how good he was, and I'm going to make a note for the draft next year that he's top at the top. I mean, him and Devontae Adams this weekend really stood out. Michael Thomas didn't have much of a game at all. Number 13, Mike Evans, and 14, Godwin on Tampa Bay. They were okay, but that ball got spread around pretty well. But I mean, Buffalo is Diggs, and Devontae Adams, he is Green Bay. I mean, Rodgers is looking for him. Number one, those guys are getting fed the ball above and beyond. In this playoffs, they're still putting up the numbers that we're doing in the regular season, whereas some of the other receivers are not coming through the same way.
It's interested to see how the next year is going to fall, but
Yeah.
really looking at getting those other players that may or slip through the radar. So when someone is looking at a number 26 pick or number 32 pick, they are educated in who they're picking based on what we talked about over the course of this show.
Yeah. But what I would say though, to the point you were making earlier, is that for me, Diggs, I had him going into this year not as one of the top guys. I knew he was good. I did not know how he was going to be with Josh Allen because I'd never seen them play together before. And I have to admit that I'm surprised at how good Diggs has been, being the number one on that team, coming from Minnesota where he was the number two. I mean, you'd think, oh, I'd love to have those two guys, Thielen and Diggs. I saw them together. Diggs is better this year with Josh Allen. And next year, for fantasy-wise, I'm looking at him for like a top 5 guy, which I did not have him at going into this season. There was some of the Browns receivers. I felt really bad for, I think it was Higgins, number 82. He was going in for what would have been like a winning touchdown, and then he got pounded, helmet to helmet, and he fumbled the ball out of bounds.
Did that happen twice, or was that just in the first quarter? Because they were going to tie up the game before halftime.
Yeah,
with that drive, and then he got targeted to the head. And
and in the end, they lost by like 5 points. So if he scores on that play, it would have been a completely different game. Chad Henne would have been trying to come from behind to win the game as the Kansas City quarterback, which is different than just don't screw it up because we're ahead. He still had to make some pretty great plays to win that game. But Cleveland's got some receivers. I guess OBJ will be back, the other number 13. Jarvis Landry, number 80, had a good rapport. He stepped up, I thought, for Cleveland in this game.
Highly qualified, skilled player, as you see. He knows how to catch the ball.
Yeah. Hooper had a great catch, I think, in that game. He had one spectacular catch, but he didn't put up a lot of stats. But that catch really kept them in the game. It was a 4th down, I believe. And
well, they have the other running back, the other tight end too, 85, 86. So Joku.
Oh yeah, Joku. That's right.
And he can catch. He can catch the ball. It's not like he is not. Last year, he was really, I think he was a rookie last year, the 2019 season, and he kind of got injured near the end of the season and kind of fell off. And I think that now they got this Hopper guy. And Hooper, yeah. And, now they have 2 pass catchers in that position. So.
Well, they don't need running backs. It was their tandem were the sort of the best of the bunch this weekend. They were really impressive. You talked a lot about Chubb in the past, and obviously he was good. Hunt was good, got into the end zone. But some of the other teams' running backs, first we'll say Aaron Jones, number 33, also Dillon, 28, and Williams, 30, from Green Bay. Those 3 were solid, and I don't know if they're going to have that committee all together next year. I think Aaron Jones is in a contract year. They were great, but Kansas City had Darrell Williams. That was their guy. I don't know where Bell was.
Bell played, but he didn't play. He was on the field. He was playing the game, but he wasn't playing the game. So he was missing passes or not running the routes as he should have. It's kind of seems like he's a little bit not on the same page as Patrick Mahomes is. And that's kind of curious because you think you see someone like Hill, number 10, doing everything right, and Kelsey doing everything right. You just be like, oh yeah, this is how I do things right. And then become the player that you were 4 years ago when you were like the creme of the league.
Yeah. I was surprised to see Baltimore's running game not dominate after being the tops in the league. And we've talked about Dobbins, number 27, in the past. But
Mhm.
he's a good, good runner, but he had some drops in this game and he missed some blocks in this game. And, they need to do something with that offense. Next year. It's too simple, and it just seems like it's, you get into some bad weather, some pressure situations, or you fall behind a little bit. Their offense doesn't work, not the same way.
Mhm. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see who they slap in. Like they have Hollywood Brown.
He's a good receiver. I just don't think at 5'9" or 5'10" or whatever that he's a number one guy. I think they need to find a number one receiver, somebody who's like 6'4". They need to go and get themselves a Metcalf, or a Brown, like you've talked about, the guy on Tennessee. They need to find a guy who's tall and rangy and can beat one-on-ones, because the other teams know, that interception that Lamar Jackson threw, they know that he's going for Mark Andrews in the middle of the field. And as he was on that play, and they were ready for it, and it was a pick six, and that's the playoff game over. So they need a big, tall, fast wide out in Baltimore if they want to get to the next step, I think.
Yeah, you need to have a complement. That's true. I didn't know Hollywood Brown was so short.
Yeah, he's a very small person. He put on an extra 20 pounds this season in the off season or something like that to get himself up to like 185. I think he's really fast. So he's like 165 pounds, or at least he was last year, about 165 pounds. I think he worked to get up to 185 for the start of this year. But as the season goes, guys lose weight because they're working so hard. So he probably dropped a few pounds. But yeah, they just need someone tall besides Mark Andrews to throw to, I think.
Mm-hmm. Well, hopefully that coupled with blocking makes for a dynamic and fun team to watch, but still hard. It's pretty hard to root for the Ravens for myself, but whatever.
You're happy they lost.
Yeah. I don't like Ravens are great, but I entertaining wise, I just have never really been connected to that team.
So something I wanted to ask you about. There's a lot of fuss about Urban Meyer because he signed as the Jacksonville coach, and I didn't know if he was an offensive coach or a defensive coach. Usually a coach is associated with one side or the ball or the other. So I looked him up, and he was at Utah with Alex Smith. And then he's never really developed a quarterback other than Dwayne Haskins. They were together at Ohio State, and you saw what happened to him. He was not pro ready. Mm-hmm. So there's, Trevor Lawrence, they've got the number one pick. Trevor Lawrence is supposed to be going to Jacksonville. And Urban Meyer, I don't know who he's going to bring in, but he better bring in somebody good, because I don't know, Trevor Lawrence, I don't know if he's the right coach to really coach him up to be so successful in the NFL, because Urban Meyer doesn't know the NFL himself.
These guys that transition from college to professional, I think it's hit or miss. You nailed it. Who's his quarterback coach? Who's his OC? What type of role does he sit on the bench? Is he just a head coach and kind of, lets his supporting team around him really make things happen? Good question. Jacksonville got a good running back. They potentially have the number one draft pick this year. So I think it's good. I think it's a good move. I think he's ready for it. And yeah, I totally support, that transition between college ball and football. If you know the game of football, you should be able to scheme. I think he did really well for Ohio State. He'll do well.
Okay, so speaking of good schemers, Robert Saleh gets the head coaching job for the Jets. He's a defensive guy. So he's apparently bringing Mike LaFleur, the brother of the Green Bay coach, over from the Shanahan system over in San Francisco. He's bringing him with him. So there's speculation now that the Jets will keep the quarterback that they have.
Mhm.
And they've got a lot of draft capital, and they are going to draft for defense, and they're going to employ the 49er system, which seems to be a good system for running backs. It doesn't matter which one. You just plug in different guys each week. So you might see a committee for the Jets next year. But Sal is a defensive guy. Yeah, it looks like Shanahan's system, he's getting bleeded the way the Patriots are getting bleeded for defensive coaches. They're just bleeding out San Fran. The guys are disappearing. Shanahan's still there, but everybody else is gone now.
Shanahan's the new pedigree of like the Belichick and Reed.
Yeah, the Reed. That's right. Reed, all of his assistants all got jobs, and a lot of the playoff teams have Reed connections. But it looks like Shanahan's and it's his dad's system, right? It's his dad, and they came from
the Dolphins.
Andy Reid and him were together in Green Bay under Paul Holmgren. So that's really all the same system, if you think about it. Or at least it has the same origins.
Mm-hmm.
And then your team's got a new coach. How excited are you about this? We're talking about Dan Campbell being hired for the Detroit Lions.
An assistant head coach to me in a team is great. However, why can't they just find that guy that was the head coach and maybe was sitting for the last 4 years, just waiting for his next opportunity? I just, it's great. It's just another, it's just the same thing as Matt Patricia. He was great. However, he goes and he runs a system, and it didn't really do so well. No flack of Matt Patricia, but with this guy, I'm just not sure if he is he was an assistant head coach, but maybe he learned lots under Sean Payton. Maybe he learned how to pucker.
Well, he was a tight end, so he's an offensive coach, and your Hawkinson is a great tight end, so maybe he'll have a really tight end friendly system in Detroit for Stafford to throw the ball next year.
Yeah, I heard he's like energetic, and I don't know. I just also think that for me, I would have liked to see a person in color in that position in Detroit to resonate with the kind of community and stuff. And I think it's that's my opinion. I think giving more opportunity to people. I mean, especially in that town, it's a working class town, and it's seen some tough times. So I don't know. I would have gone a different route. I would have gone with the guy that was coaching Cincinnati a couple of years ago, Marvin Hall, maybe his name was, or
Marvin Lewis.
Yeah, or I probably would have taken maybe even like the Chargers coach that got fired, and someone like that. I don't know. It might have been a little bit better, but let's see what happens. I'm not going to say Dan Campbell is not going to be good or bad. I haven't seen him produce. I don't know what he does. So what? It's Detroit. They're going to be like 28th next year in the league. They're going to have like a hot game here and there.
Well, who do you think will take the Houston job? Deshaun Watson wants Darren Bieniemy, and everybody hates everybody in Houston, and there's a lot of reports that he's going to be gone. And we already talked about this, about how they love to get rid of all their good players. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, if I'm a head coach going into looking at that organization and what a mess it is, I mean, I don't know who they're going to get, but I don't know if that's the job that I would want. That doesn't seem like such a good opportunity right now.
No, it's the best thing about an opportunity like that is, there's really no expectations for you. So if your expectations are to fail, the critics win. If your expectations are to win, the critics are then win too. So it's, to me, I don't know. I don't know too much about who they're looking for, what they actually need on that team. It'd be nice to see them at least to put a competitive team on the field each week, which you have seen them do in the past if they have the players to be coached. So see what happens with the roster. I don't account for any fantasy people to pick on that next year. I would stay away from all fantasy players.
Deshaun Watson's one of the best quarterbacks in the league, but we don't know if he's going to be on that team. But if he is, you have to look at that.
Oh yeah, he can throw touchdowns. He was the second most. He threw for the second most this year.
Yeah, great season. I have to look at
great season. However,
yeah,
well, that's just my thoughts. I'll just stay away. And yeah, if Watson was there in my league at a certain draft pick, I'll pick him up. But I would stay away from that team at the moment. All players.
The Eagles are bringing in Josh Daniels for interviews, trying to see if he can fix Carson Wentz. Seriously, they were meeting with him today. So, because they got an opening. Somebody's got to take that job and fix Carson Wentz. So, I guess they're looking at offensive-minded guys to see who can do it. And the Chargers hired Brandon Staley. He's had 1 year in the league as a defensive coordinator. 1 year. He's been in the league 4 years. He was with Vic Fangio in Denver as an outside linebackers coach. 1 year as a coordinator, and now he is the head coach of the Chargers. So we don't know what's going to happen with all the guys that are there. They got great players there. We talked about Allen, and we talked about Herbert and Austin Eckler. But I mean, he might keep the offensive coordinator that they have, Shane Steichen. So maybe you could expect the same kind of production from their triplets there next year. But there's also talk that he's going to talk to the Rams coordinator, Kevin O'Donnell, I think his name is. So it's a big question mark there. There's still so many guys looking at next year that it's a toss-up with whether they're going to be good or not. There's a lot to keep track of this off-season, and I'm excited about looking at the college players that are coming out. I don't think they're going to have an in-person combine this season, but I'm definitely going to be looking to see some of the new blood that's coming up.
It's going to be interesting if there's no combine, because everyone's just going to be like cheating on their times. Oh yeah, I started here's my 40. I forgot. I run a 4.2.
Yeah. Just ask my coach.
Yeah. Oh, I can jump. Yeah, I hit the 10.6. Oh,
yeah,
really?
I'm good. Ask my mom.
Yeah.
But I think they're going to have pro days still, and the scouts are going to have to travel around a lot more. They're not going to have everybody all together till this COVID thing is gone.
Mm-hmm. Did they have I can't recall. They didn't have one last year, did they?
No, they didn't. I think they're not doing it again. We are done for our time.
All right.
Okay, man. Thanks.